Let's see, question number 2. We are now worried because there's enough fires and enough earthquakes that this liberal society might be able to actually be worried about voting. Now, the best part. Hey, Chris Ray. Now, Ted Lieu is specifically asked to go to North Korea to interview. You sign a effing executive order stating that the gentleman cannot go to, North Korea to travel. Now, this executive order document has never been discussed by the general public. It's only issued 10 days before it. And the best part, the very, very, very best part, is the video isn't supposed to reach the U.S. surface by this time. And if it isn't for having the MAC ID number of 7 prime ministers of China, yes, China, and saying your condolences during their funerals as deputy, gubernatorial, and prime ministers of the country, and asking if you had the name pronounced correctly, that the previous prime minister or deputy prime minister releases that video. The same one that is on YouTube now. Now, you can't pull his live scan when he's sitting in that nice little Tahoe and he says he's forwarding it before my summit speech. But we can't ask that in Spanish, Korean, French, Italian, Arabic. And now, the very, 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 very best part. So, I have the brief stram screaming while you snore and you sleep, Mr. President. It gets my wiener hard to know that you're sleeping and what you're thinking about, Mr. President. It is so sexually gratifying. You know, hearing you snore and maybe fart is better than asking my wife to nut. But we're not supposed to understand that that Tesla information just might have been to raise for a hospital. Now, a $500 million donation to your conservative action PAC. Now, that conservative action PAC means that, hi, I'm Joe Bannon. Ida, related, O'Bannon Bradley. You know, I guess I'm not supposed to understand that I can stream Breeze software 24/7. Now, what about that with Ross? What about that with the other group? But we're not supposed to talk about that in view of our appointments. What about when we get our dividend? And our statistical quarterly. Oh, how it affects the other ETFs. So instead of entering it at 350, 375, what about it entering it at 575, 625, and getting out at about 1400? But that's not supposed to be talked about the general public, just like tax returns. Now, that doesn't matter if I'm in the Napa Valley, I'm rich and famous. Now, my rich and famous lifestyle means that in the, neo-Nazi, white male supremacy, Nazi lowrider groups, that I am the spokesperson. Now, I'm that spokesperson. That means I'm famous. I'm famous. I'm not supposed to be known as the 4-year-old virgin guy. I'm supposed to be seen as this influencer. Now, this influencer doesn't have, I'm a COVID czar. I'm the COVID czar. As a COVID czar under Marshall Plan, I'm the equivalent of Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Health and Human Services. I do policy mandates. Oh, I also personal attorney, never confirmed by the Senate or House. Now, if I'm the Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary of Treasury, and Secretary of Homeland, the equivalent of that position, 7, 9, 13, and 16 in the cabinet, and maybe even 12, depending on the validity. Now, that wouldn't matter if there's never been a vote about it. Well, what happened with my tax returns? What happens in that view? Now, if I'm famous in that conservative group, I told him I'd pay for it, and I mean it. That wouldn't be what part of those letters are. How much you made off of that one stock play. How much you allowed me to be the trustee and the administrator of the DJT Incorporated after the COO, and you changed hands, allowing the tax agent and the trustee or the grantor, which would be the same nephew and the sister, and move it in assets. And then the best part, how much you individually made pre and post it based on one entity. Now, that wouldn't be like, I need your cell phone. What about if that was those little small things like that? Like, hey, while you're sleeping, when you, I like to know you farted. It gives me a chubby knowing that, you're snoring heavy. Now, those aren't those kind of things that most Americans want to talk about. Now, if that's those type of things, instead of send me back to the cousin, don't you want to get this close to the family and the president? Aren't you this big of a supporter? Now, aren't you this much of a political party allegiant? Now, here's the best question. Jackson Walking Ford, you ran as a Democratic vice president instead of Hillary. Why didn't you run again? Now, I can't ask Marcus Milley that question when, hey, you're first cousins. You're a joint chairman. At that time, you were still a 3-star general. 3-star general and a governor and previous vice president nominee sorry, Hillary. And then the very best. I'm a one-term president known as Jimmy. I'm Jimmy. I guess instead of what we call the 38th Negro of the United States, or great-grandpa, I guess he can't die in office. I guess no woman nominee as vice president. What about that general? Now, I can name a handful: Carol Barrett, Kenita Jackson, Miss Trout. Now, those aren't better nominees if he was to die, right? Now, what about if that was ever Judge Stevens or Judge King? Nope, don't get that right. Now, here's the best question. I said Ted Lieu over there, and this Marcus Milley guy decides to run with him on the Green Party as the vice president. Would they be a stronger candidate than I and James Michael and Joe and Camellia? Not supposed to ask Americans this question. White America, we hunky in the first place. Make America great again, stupid as we are. Now, this ain't those type of questions if you were to ask middle of the road, right? We're not supposed to consider that. We're not supposed to ask this. A-okay. But fire, fire, fire. We need another war. Viral meningitis. Good thing.